Hi, my name is Andy Splichal. I have been mentioned as a world's foremost expert in e-commerce growth strategies. Over the last 20 years, I've worked with hundreds of e-commerce companies and coached countless others through my Make Each Click Count book series. When I decided to do the speech, I was trying to figure out how I was going to motivate a room of entrepreneurs. And I decided that the absolute best way would be to talk about myself. I would talk about myself, I'd tell stories about myself, everybody would be inspired, pattern their lives after me. Easy peasy button squeezy, as the kids like to say. So that's what I did. I wrote that speech, I practiced that speech, and I got feedback on that speech. Well, the feedback wasn't great. In fact, one feedback was, and this is rough, it was, I hope that the room is locked so they can't get out. That's rough, right? But another piece was really good advice. They said, instead of focusing on yourself, Andy, why don't you go out there and tell them about lessons that you have learned and lessons that people you have helped have learned being entrepreneurs that will help them avoid the same mistake. So that's what I did. I revamped the speech, and that's what we're going to do today. Being an entrepreneur is hard. In fact, you know how many entrepreneurs are successful on average? So statistics say that 66% of entrepreneurs fail. So that's 2 out of 3 people are going to fail. And that is fail miserably, like shut down. That's not even 1 in 3 is going to be successful. Look at the person to your left, look at the person to the right. Only one of you is even going to be in business in 5 years. And so what I thought would be helpful is that I took why entrepreneurs fail, and I took it down to 5 tripwires that I have seen and wanted to share with you today so you can learn from it, take it into your own business, and hopefully avoid the pain of having to shut the business down. So, tripwire number 1 is if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to be my own boss. It's a sexy thought, being your own boss. And a lot of people, that's why they initially go into being an entrepreneur. Many of you probably have too. In fact, let's see hands on how many. Yeah, so a lot of hands on why they do it. I mean, you could have had a crap boss in the past. I understand. I've been there. And you think you can do it better. Yeah, you probably can. But I got really bad news for you. And the bad news is this. You're never going to be your own boss. You're always going to answer to somebody. Whether it's customers, whether it's clients, if you get bigger, be a board of directors, you're always going to answer to somebody. Now, you might not have to punch a time clock. You might be able to work on your own terms, but you have to keep in mind that you are answering to somebody. And even though you may be signing the paycheck now, you're not funding the bank account. And that is an important thing for especially new entrepreneurs to understand is who funds that bank account, because they are your bosses. And most likely, you're going to have more than one bosses. So you need to keep that in mind, because when you start out, you might not see them. You might not have them. You might just start. It might be nobody is funding your bank account to start. When you grow, you might have a level in between you and your customer or your client. But never forget who is funding your bank account. So tripwire number 2 that I see often is if you build your product or service, your company, customers are going to take care of themselves. Now, there is a quote by a great American philosopher that goes, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Anybody know who said that? No, not Martha Stewart. That was a good guess. The philosopher is Mike Tyson. And he said it right before a fight with Evander Holyfield. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. That's true as an entrepreneur. You are going to get punched in the mouth as an entrepreneur. But it is important when you do to remember that everything is about value. I'll say it again, let it sink in. Everything is about value. So your company is going to grow based on what value you bring, what problems you are solving for how many people and how big a problem that you were solving. It's not enough to just solve a problem either. You need to be crystal clear in clarity on what problem you're solving, why it needs to be solved, and what life would look like for those that you solve the problem for. You know, a lot of new entrepreneurs especially, and I hear this, is they'll say, my customers aren't smart enough to buy my products. And that is really backwards thinking. Because customers are customers. It's the entrepreneur who hasn't done a good job creating the clarity that they need in order to sell their product or service. So tripwire, number 3, is I don't need goals. Don't need goals in my business. Growth will happen at its own rate. You know, what really drove this home for me is a speech I listened to by famous motivational speaker Zig Ziglar, and the story that he shared, and I want to share that with you. And he was talking about Sir Edmund Hillary. If you don't know, Sir Edmund Hillary is the first person to climb Mount Everest. And so the story goes that Sir Edmund Hillary climbed Mount Everest and then came back down. And when he got back down, a reporter asked him, how'd you do it? How did you climb Mount Everest? And his response was, well, you know, I was just walking around one day, looked up, and there I was on the summit of Mount Everest. You know, that is silly, of course. You know, you'd have to train. You'd have to know where you were going. But so many entrepreneurs treat their business like they are just walking around and hope that they will someday climb Mount Everest. Now, goal setting, if you've never done it, can be daunting. And in fact, it can be so daunting that you might find it unnecessary. So what I like to do, and there are whole classes you can take on how to make goals, keep goals, attain your goals. But what I like to do is look at 1 year, 5 year, 10-year increments, and then work your way backwards. Because by doing that and figuring out what tasks you need to where you want to go, you will have a roadmap on how you can get there. That roadmap might change. Maybe need to be tweaked as you go down the highway, but at least you will have something to start working on your journey in business. Number 4, fourth tripwire that I see often is that if I just got bigger, I wouldn't have any more problems. Problems would be gone. If I could just get to this level, I wouldn't have any more problems. And in fact, that's not true. The bigger you get, the more problems you get. And look at Elon Musk, probably the most successful entrepreneur right now. And you don't think he has problems? Yeah, of course he does. Of course he does. Now, when you are first starting out, problems are different than when you have an established company. When you first start a business, maybe you're doing a side hustle in the evening, your problem is time. When do you find the time? If you're doing a business in the evening, you're going to miss things you don't want to miss. And that's where the other tripwires come into play. Tripwire 1, on knowing why you are doing it. Tripwire 3, on setting your goals and knowing where you're going to go are very important. As you grow bigger, you're going to come into more problems. Your time problems are going to be replaced with people problems. People not showing up for work, firing people, hiring people, people not doing what they're supposed to be doing. It is an endless array of problems. If you get even bigger than that, your pure people problem are going to be people and inventory supply problems. So you can see there is never an end to the problem. There is only how you address those problems, and that's what will set you apart as an entrepreneur. You know, it's cliche to enjoy the journey, but that's what you need to do. You're an entrepreneur. You need to be a problem solver, and you need to be a puzzle maker. By doing that, you can grow your company to where you want to grow it. Tripwire number 5. It's, I can do it by myself. I can do it all by myself. And this is an oxymoron of sorts, because as an entrepreneur, most likely you're ambitious, you're hardworking, that's how you've gotten to where you are going. And you think Who can do it better than me? The answer is probably nobody. Probably nobody can do it better than you. But how much can you do? And that is really the question if you want to grow. Another problem entrepreneurs have is they get in a team, but then they micromanage that team because nobody can do it as well as you can do it. So you need to work on putting systems in place, processes that will help you run a business that can be sustainable and can grow. Otherwise, what you're left with is a job, probably a stressful job if you want to grow, and one that is solely dependent upon you. And if it's solely dependent upon you, it's a stressful job. It's not going to last, or at least it's not going to grow to its full potential. So now you know the 5 tripwires that I have seen that affect businesses and why businesses fail. So now it is, what are you going to do with this? Number 1, you're not going to be your own boss. So you got to serve your customers. Number 2, customers aren't going to magically appear. It's not feel the dream, so that they will come. Being an entrepreneur is hard. Number 3, if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. So you need to make yourself a roadmap to where you want to go through goals. Number 4, problems are never going to end. That's just a fact, as sad as it is. Problems are never going to end, so it's your job to solve those problems. And number 5, you can't do it all by yourself, as much as we would like to sometimes. In order to grow, you need to build a team, and you need to put processes in place for that team to perform. So we're almost done with our speech today, time together, but I wanted to leave you with a couple more things that you can do to help you with your business. Number 1, look and see, do you have clarity with your product, service? And how do you do that? I have a great exercise I like to do with some of my private clients is have them take their website to a family or friend. Hopefully they're in the same room, and hopefully that family or friend can be honest with them. Have them look at your website 45 seconds to a minute, then shut it off. Ask them, what problem am I solving? What problem is this website solving? And how would life be better if that problem is solved? You're going to find a world of information from that exercise, and it's a good chance you might not be as clear with your messages as you think you are. Number 2, get clarity with where you're going. Go ahead and spend an afternoon and jot it down to start with. But 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, where do you want to be as a company? Only then, when you know where you want to be, can you start to try to get there. So go ahead and do that, and you'll be surprised at what happens down the road. Third thing is do yourself a favor, be smart, and let's connect. I got a lot of great information on my website to help entrepreneurs, and I'm always happy to connect with those who want to be successful. Thank you for your time.